In this documentary, we will explore urban legends and paranormal activity in a small yet very active vortex in southeastern Michigan. At this point, I believe it is helpful for us to define urban legend and paranormal activity.
Urban legend, a tale that appears mysteriously and spreads spontaneously in various forms, and usually contains elements of humor or horror, and is popularly believed to be true. Paranormal activity, beyond the range of normal experience or scientific explanation, such as a paranormal phenomena.
Facing harsh reality, our perpetually overworked and underemployed culture has found it comforting to turn our subconscious to simpler storytelling roots.
So growing up in Romeo, everyone talked about Sand Hill and all the legends surrounding it. There's a glowing grave. A lot of the rumors, people that made up over the years was there was a witch buried there, making the grave glow.
It's said that on a full moon night, it would glow. I mean, I've been there and I saw the stone, and it did have a shining appeal to it. A lot of times when you're trying to leave the place, a lot of people said that the cars would break down or they have problems starting their cars. One time I was at Sand Hill Cemetery and I had an old Dodge Charger, 73, and a couple friends of mine and myself went out there to check it out. When we did get back to the car, our car wouldn't start.
We went out there and tried to communicate with whatever might be out there, whatever is causing this glowing grave to appear. While we were out there, we pretty much debunked the glowing grave story by the cemetery sits off a very highly active dirt road. It's a very busy north-south road, and whenever a vehicle is traveling up and down that road, the lights reflect off of this large, tall, round ball on top of a grave, which gives a reflection of a glowing grave. We experienced that numerous times, and even if you're standing at one point in the cemetery, and if the moon is bright enough, the moon will reflect off of this grave as well.
We did get, however, a pretty good EVP from one of the grave sites that we were trying to make communication with. Solid EVP, sounds like a whispering voice. Like a whispering voice saying, "Will you talk to me?" Was kind of a trip when you first listened to it, and ran chills down the back of your spine.
Founded in 1840, the sleepy hamlet of Romeo, Michigan is home to dozens of storybook Victorian homes. But to those sensitive souls who are attuned to the unseen, Romeo's stately mansions hold much more than Gothic architectural detail. By turning a discerning eye to the Victorian verandas and gingerbread trim, you might catch a wisp of a figure that disappears at second glance, or hear the image of a trapped, agonized spirit calling out for release. The intricately ornate facade of the Brab House cloaks a history of misery. For over a century, the house that George Washington Brab built has been host to death, disease, and insanity.
Originally, it was George Washington Brab, and his family owned the house, and he was a local merchant, banker, very well-to-do, obviously, to own a house like this back in the day. He lived here originally with his wife and 2 children. I'm not sure if his sisters were here at the time, but they did also live in the house for some time. The original wife and the 2 children passed away, to the best of our knowledge, in the home, within a couple weeks of each other, as we've been told, and then he remarried. Now, when he died in around circa 1917, his niece, Alice Brab, was a doctor, and the writings tell us it was the first osteopathic hospital in Michigan. So for a time, it was a TB sanitarium. It's been in this neighborhood since 1877, and we've lived here 30 years, and I've always been fascinated by this old place. It was in pretty bad shape when we took it over.
With the Brab House's past, the activity in the house has certainly not been laid to rest.
Well, the hallways, according to the guests, seem to have the most activity. Whether it's a glimpse of light coming through that they're seeing or whatever, but generally when they take photographs, we've had people take photographs for weddings and all kinds of different events, and they'll note something in the picture. My wife does her table setting and all the work she does around the house, and we use both sides of the house for events. So she says when she's in this room, which is our dining room, that she's always getting a glimpse out of the corner of her eye that somebody is either standing in the hallway like this and looking, and as she turns and looks, it moves away.
On a recent visit by our paranormal crew, the Brab House released a substantial amount of activity.
We had a period of time in the dining room where all of the investigators were in the dining room. We had various different pieces of equipment, various different types of EMF meters, and we were getting full communication with spirits where it was responding to questions in yes and no's, using the lights and the instrumentation for response. We were able to take one of the EMF meters, and in reading the EMF field, the electromagnetic field, you could outline the shape of a man sitting in a chair at one point in time.
I felt what seems to be like how a child would grab you around the knee and kind of cling on, like protect me. I felt that on my knee, and it actually was so strong it almost made me fall forward.
After asking the spirit to bring all of the other children that might be in the room, we all felt a presence of many, many people huddled around us, touching our legs, holding our hands. We all felt the presence of children for some reason.
So we were all talking, and we had all of our gear all surrounded, and we heard at 2 different points, probably about 20 seconds apart, we heard a voice speak. There was no one else in the house, and it was a male's voice, and it sounded like it said Laura. There was no Lauras in the house, obviously.
And we all heard the names Lauren and Tom being called out.
I heard that.
Yeah, I just heard it.
I was just gonna say I think Tom's up, but I don't think that's Tom.
I heard like someone said Laura.
I heard a man's voice.
Yeah, and this is a man right here.
Can you talk into my
Yeah, I
voice?
just heard somebody say Tom.
So at the Brab House, we were sitting at the table. The rest of the crew was out for a smoke break. It was myself and Josh, and we were sitting at the table just playing around with some of the equipment, and one of them was the EMF detector. So The EMF detector is supposed to detect presence or electromagnetic fields. And we started asking questions and it started lighting up. Well, one of the supposed haunts of the place is children. So we started asking questions sort of geared towards children on whether to play hide and seek or not. And it would light up, we would ask them to run away, it would go away, and they'd come back. And then after a while, Todd came in, and Todd had been sort of chasing activity around the house earlier in the night, and we asked the question of, Todd asked the question of whether or not they'd like to play hide and seek, and after we listened to the digital recording later on, you could hear a faint, what sounded like a yes.
You guys keep track of the hide and seek with me? What's going on there? You guys keep track of the hide and seek with me? What's going on there?
On more than one occasion, Tom has heard the rattling of a latch on a heavily bolted basement door while he was alone in the house.
We didn't live in the house at the time, so there was nobody in here but me down in the basement. And I had been walking back and forth to my tool rooms, which is way down the hall here. And one time I walked by and I actually thought I saw something like that happen out of the corner of my eye. I had a dimly lit light back here, but I got pretty good peripheral vision, so that kind of freaked me out a little bit. Went back to work, went back in my tool room to get something else. The next time I came by, it did that. And it latched. It actually clicked. So I stopped. I tried to gather myself for a second. I looked down the hallway and I said, come on, I'm working here. I'm trying to get some Christmas presents made. Then I realized I was talking to myself and went back to what I was doing. This room was rumored by previous staff and other people that we've talked to be a type of disciplinary room. How true that is. I mean, I even have people that tell me the wood stove out in the main part of the basement was used during the years of the sanitarium as a place to burn bodies.
We opened up the furnace, or I opened the furnace on one of the doors, and I looked in and I shined my flashlight in there. And obviously it's real dark. Well, something had blocked out right behind my flashlight, like a shadow, and it immediately went away. And there was nothing in front of my flashlight that would suggest that something close to it was blocking it out. I looked back, and this is all solid white back there, and all I saw was black. My light was still on because everything around was illuminated, but it was just solid black. And then I blinked, and boom, back to white.
There's some evidence that there was forced entries into these rooms, or into this particular room, by some of the damage that's been caused here and some of the things that are on the door. So that would lead us to believe that somebody forgot a key, or somebody wanted to get out of here pretty bad.
I heard a child giggle when I was in the basement of the Brab house. There's a room they have down there that they believe was a punishment room for children a long time ago when it was an orphanage, and we heard a child giggle, and you could see, if the footage is in this film, you can see me go, oh. And I was a little excited.
Maybe they're like, yay, hi.
Do you want me to lock you in here? Do you want me to chain you up?
Whoa.
What was that?
It was a kid laughing.
That's what I thought I heard too.
Did you hear that, Josh? No. It was a kid laughing.
Yeah.
It's getting cold.
Yeah, it is really cold right here.
My legs are getting cold.
Right here.
You think this is funny?
Guests have reported hearing the sounds of kids running up and down the stairs and hallways in the middle of the night.
The two children that history says would have passed away here, and mostly playful things, nothing mean, nothing scary, that type of thing. And generally activity was at the end of this hallway, heading down into the servants' quarters, but back and forth has been most what's been seen up here. Well, the children in the hallway, first part, this is where they felt them the most. This may have been a play area for the kids. It may have been who knows what kind of room it was used for at that time. I don't get scared in this room. I'm just not crazy about this room. When I come in this room, it just doesn't make you feel warm and cozy like other parts of the house do for me. I didn't like it in here. I just didn't like it. I really can't say why.
The owner, Tom, had some weird experiences in there. He wasn't too sure on what happened, but he was just very uncomfortable being in that room.
While we were in there investigating, we had all the equipment on the bed trying to communicate with the spirits. And at one point, the spirit that we were talking to was communicating through our walkie-talkies, which was one of the first times we had that experience, which was really cool. After that, while we were trying to continue talking with the spirit, we felt this enormous rush of cold air run right through both of our bodies. It must have dropped the temperature in the room probably 20 degrees. At one point, the hair on our arms was standing up, and we were getting goosebumps on our face, which is something we've never experienced before, which was really cool.
Well, it was a foster care home, obviously, before, and it ran as to a certain date while we were in the process of the purchase. And from the time we signed the purchase agreement to the time the house closed, actually, there was a death in this room, right to my right.
I got on videotape on one of our pieces of footage, at the very end of the tape, you can hear a car drive by, and there's nobody in the room. The camera's stationary on the table, and we actually hear a man's voice say,
I'm not there.
a man's voice say, "'Cause I'm not there." And there was nobody else in the room. Everybody else, the camera was on them actually in the dining room. And to me that was very impressive when I heard that.
I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm not there.
There's a paradox here. A home with architectural grandeur and perfection that also holds a great amount of pain and emotional devastation. Something about the life or death of the countless souls who have passed through this home have left an unsettled and mesmerizing presence in the home. And this unsettled domain is the realm where ghosts dwell. Romeo is home to a cluster of Victorian mansions, many with past unknown. However, the Prospect House, situated on Prospect Street in downtown Romeo, has a meticulously documented past. Like many other Victorian mansions in Michigan, the Prospect House was built by early settlers of the area, who arrived with wealth and education from the Northeast, with intentions of securing their wealth in these newly prosperous regions. The home was passed through a succession of wealthy owners, the wealthiest of whom may have been the notorious Detroit Mafia members of the Purple Gang. It has been speculated that this notoriously ruthless mob may have used the home during the 1930s as a hideout or a drying out retreat. Most recently, the home has been restored to a luxurious bed and breakfast and tea house by current owners Jerry and Ron Markowitz.
The house was built in 1870 to 1871 by Ransom Moore, who owned half the bank in town, the Citizens Bank, right in downtown Romeo. And he moved here from Troy, New York. And unfortunately, his wife died within 2 years of building this house. Then he sold it and moved to Western Michigan. We're the 8th owners of the house. Even the Purple Gang owned it at one time.
It was during the restoration of the home that Ron noticed odd occurrences.
So temporarily we moved a chandelier from the bedroom into here. And 3 of us were moving it because it was a fairly big chandelier. And while we were up on the ladder, we heard a big boom down the hallway, and ran down the hallway to see that a mirror had been kicked off the wall. And the frame was broken. The wire was intact on the mirror, and the hook was still on the wall. So someone had to pick that mirror up and bring it down for it to break. And those are the kind of things that happened when we moved something original without having a little powwow with the ghosts.
Experiencing things when people are doing changes to a home or a business, I think occurs when possibly a homeowner that used to live there really liked that house a lot, or really fell in love with that house, and they're seeing people make changes that they don't agree with.
At Christmas time, we put the Christmas tree right there, and we take that chandelier in the hallway down, so that I can wire the tree up through the ceiling and then use the switch to turn the lights off and on. So I think this was 2 Christmases ago. We did this, and I took the chandelier down, put the wire nuts on the ends of the wires until I brought the tree in and so on. And I forgot to have the little powwow. So Jerry and her son were walking up the stairs, this main staircase, and they got about halfway or so when they found the wire nuts laying down there on the steps. And they said, "What are these doing here?" And I looked up and the nuts were gone. And apparently that was just their little reminder that you didn't talk to us first. And they threw the wire nuts up the stairs.
A lot of noise. We used to, when we first got here, we heard a lot, or we used to be able to smell a lot. And you could go up and down the stairs and you could walk into the smell of her and walk out of it and walk back into it. That, not so much lately.
What kind of smell?
Like real sweet roses, potpourri kind of a smell. But it was in a definite area where you could walk into it and walk out of it.
People experiencing aromas in different areas of houses or possible hauntings lead me to believe that it's a residual haunting.
I came here one day and all the lights were off. I didn't think anything of it, so I walk in. I came by the main stairway and I hear a bunch of doors slamming. That's weird. So I called my mom because I didn't find anybody. And, she gets on the phone. "Yeah, we're all over at Dairy Queen." I'm like, "Oh, okay then." So now I know that nobody else is home and the doors are slamming, so I proceeded to turn around and walk right back out.
I believe at the Prospect House, when they hear the doors opening and closing upstairs and then they go to check it out and nothing's happening, it's just something that they're hearing, I believe that's part of a residual haunting.
At the Prospect House, I got one EVP in front of the Juliet room. There is a sigh that I picked up. It's the only EVP I picked up there. The other thing I saw in the Juliet room was there was a pink mist that kind of floated by at one point in time.
Cameras run out. Well, my camera with the light on it. You ever looked at a night vision camera?
Yeah.
One of these cameras run out. Well, my camera with the light on it. You ever looked at a night vision camera?
As soon as you pulled up to the driveway, it's just a monster house, and it kind of looks like something you'd see out of a horror film. So right away, I was pretty excited to get in there and start looking around. While we're in there investigating, we really didn't come away with a whole lot of evidence that we could nail down as paranormal activity. There are a few things that sent our meters off. We weren't able to pick up any real solid EVPs. All in all, the investigation left us a little disappointed. And
I grew up in the area. I've heard nothing but the spookiest stories from this house, and when we actually got the opportunity to go in and investigate, I was like a kid in a candy store. I wanted the tour of the house. I wanted to know where all the hot spots were, what all the things that go on. And during the investigation, nothing happened. We had a few EVPs that we kind of had to rule out just because of background noise or the possibility that it could have been something else. So we kind of take that into account, and we can't really present that to someone declaring paranormal activity when we ourselves can't say that, yes, this is paranormal.
As in other Victorian mansions in Romeo, the Prospect House has a grand sense of the past, as well as the personal histories of all those who have passed through its doors. Lakeville, Michigan is located in the northeast corner of Oakland County and is geographically defined by Lakeville Lake, which encompasses most of the area of the tiny lakeside village. Lakeville Lake is bordered by quaint beach cottages, and at the turn of the century, it was a popular weekend destination for Detroit and other residents looking to cool off in the sweltering summer months. These days, Lakeville is also a popular tourist destination, but for a much darker reason. Visitors are drawn to Lakeville Cemetery, that is home to a tomb with a disturbing amount of tales surrounding it. We respectfully offer the following tale, We must remind viewers to always keep in mind that cemeteries are sacred places. The living must tread lightly and obey all cemetery rules. Lakeville Cemetery is home to an astounding amount of legends. From the gentleman apparition who wanders the cemetery dressed in Victorian period garb, to unexplained movement of time and space. Most tales, however, focus on one remote area of the cemetery, Dunn's Tomb, the final resting place of James and Elizabeth Dunn. The tomb itself is set into an earthen hill and was built to last an eternity.
A lot of the things that have happened in the cemetery are mostly connected to Dunn's Tomb.
A fortress of moss-covered stones guards the entrance door.
Since I've lived near Dunn's Tomb, I've done a little bit of investigating, but it's kind of a mystery trying to find out anything about the Dunns. Noticed is that their tomb faces the east, and I believe that's so that they can see the sun come up every morning, even after they passed on.
Yeah, there was a place at Lakeville where, I don't know, you paid a quarter or something a piece, and families would come from, especially the east side, like Warren and East Detroit, Sterling Heights. A lot of kids out there, and the word was around in there, like in the locker room and the game room. Where's Dunn's Tomb? You know about the haunted tomb? And of course you'd fill them full of ghost stories.
The door to the tomb used to be unlocked, and local teens would sometimes hold seances with Ouija boards and candles there. Some recall the coffin lids moving at midnight, and another subject tells of his first time visiting the tomb.
I heard about Dunn's Tomb when I was 15. My older brother, about 10 years older than I was, took me there one Saturday night. He had gone there with his group of friends back in the early 70s, and they used to, party inside the tomb when you could get into it. I guess there was a cement casket, and they'd go in there and put candles up and kind of wait for midnight. Supposedly at that time, the lid of the casket would move, and that would be enough to scare them all out, and they would leave. But once in a while, when it didn't move, they just kind of hung out, and they saw figures, people wearing robes and hoods, coming through the cemetery towards them, and they would actually be chased out. I guess there was a monastery close by, and they thought that there was tunnels to the tomb, to the cemetery, and then they would patrol, the monks would patrol the cemetery. They carried bats and pitchforks and literally would scare them right to their cars and beat on their cars, and they would take off.
Another man had his date of death given by the Ouija board right before the Ouija's pointer flew off the board.
Why we went back, I don't know, but it was an adventure, so we started going probably the next year. We'd bring our dates down there and try to scare them, of course, and we sometimes went in the daytime, but most of the time at night. Nothing really happened until one evening the girls decided to bring a Ouija board. And we thought that was a good idea, and we couldn't get inside the tomb, but there was cement caskets around there that we could sit on. And we brought candles, and so we'd be outside the tomb and playing Ouija. And that little disc that's on that board would just go fast and faster around with each question that we asked it. And one of the questions was about a friend that was with us. They asked if when he was going to die, and it actually spelled out a date, an exact date in the future. And of course, my friend was kind of getting nervous and laughing it off. But then they asked it how he was going to die, and it spelled out the word army. And we were probably 17, and he screamed, and that disc flew right off the board. And we looked at him and said, "Are you okay?" And he's like,
yeah, I didn't tell you guys, but I'm enlisting into the Army, after high school. And no one knew that, so we were all freaked out and ended up pretty much running out. We ran back to our cars, and at that time we used to take quite a few people, so we'd park a couple of the cars in a parking lot, and then everyone would jump into my station wagon, and we'd bring 10 people down, and we all jumped in my car, went back to the parking lot, and the girls who had brought the Ouija board got out, and their car was completely flipped upside down onto its roof without a scratch on either side or the roof itself. And when we got the tow truck there, he looked at it and said he has no idea how it could possibly be flipped over like that without a scratch, a dent, anything on either side. Because when he tried to put it back onto all four wheels, he almost totaled it, by pulling it. So that was pretty creepy. And I had been taking pictures of the whole evening. And when I developed the film, there was a shot of my buddy who was going to be enlisted in the Army. There was some kind of noose around his neck, and freaked him out quite a bit. Needless to say, when he did go to the Army, when that day came up, he never left his barracks. He stayed in bed the whole time and didn't move.
A number of subjects that were interviewed regarding Dunn's tomb have all heard tales of someone staying in the tomb overnight and not living to see the light of day.
Some friends, a group of guys, young guys, went out, teenagers, went out to the tomb, and they dared their friend to stay the night in the tomb. And when he went in, they actually locked it. And the story is that he went crazy, locked in the tomb overnight. Whether he saw anything or not, I don't know. But that he went crazy and committed suicide. So now they say that he haunts that tomb.
I heard that there was a mistress of Dunn's that went inside the tomb and to visit him. And the door got shut. She was locked in there, and she was screaming and clawing at the door. And that when they finally did get in to rescue her, that there was claw marks all over the door, blood all over the door, and that she was dead, like something apparently attacked her.
As I was growing up as a kid in Lakeville, we heard a story that some bikers were out there having a campfire and partying one night. And one of the girls in their party was really afraid of the tomb, and so they, as a joke, threw her in there and locked her in. That when they opened the door in the morning and let her out, she looked like a 90-year-old woman and had white hair.
Not all activity experienced in the cemetery had to do with Dunn's tomb. A few subjects told of stories pertaining to the cemetery itself.
My story with Lakeville Cemetery goes back to when I was into third grade, between third and fourth grade, which would have been 64, 65. So we built a small bonfire and we took the girls out there, and we were scaring them with spooky stories and stuff. Well, the cousin, I don't even remember her name, she had to go to the bathroom. So we were laughing and said, well, just go behind those bushes over there. So she walked down the hill a little farther behind the bushes, and she came running back screaming, there's a ghost in a car, there's a ghost in a car. And we're like, yeah, sure, okay. So we all got up, and it was a nice clear moonlit night, very peaceful. When we got through the bushes and looked, it was the sunlight was washing over the small clearing between us and where the tree started, where the car was sitting. And there really did appear to be a mildly glowing person sitting upright in the car with a hat on. It was like a fedora, just an old style 40s type hat. And the whole incident didn't take very long, maybe 10-15 seconds. But as we watched, the body rose up out of it, where the seat would have been, and started to go through where the windshield would have been, because there was no glass, just an old rusty hull. And as the figure passed through the windshield, it never came out the front. So it was like the hat disappeared first, the head, the neck, the torso, the legs, the feet, and then it was gone, and it was over. And we're like, wow, that was weird.
Me, my mom, and my sister were going to put flowers on my great-grandmother's grave, and we were getting back in the car to leave, and that's when we noticed two guys standing off in the corner with a professional-looking camera trained in over toward the mausoleum, Dunn's Tomb. And there was a man standing, at first I thought he was standing in front of them, so I thought they were faking a ghost picture, because people go out there and do all kinds of stuff at Lakeville Cemetery. And that's when we noticed that he wasn't dressed like somebody else would be. His coat was long, it was a little tattered, and his skin was pale as well, and his hat was like a Dick Tracy hat, but flat on the top with a rim. And but we just thought they were faking it, so we didn't really think anything of it. So we got in the car and we were getting toward the exit of the cemetery, and he had moved from them to the exit of the cemetery, and we were freaking out. It's like, oh my God, great, you know. And that's when I noticed he didn't have eyes; they were completely black. Me and my twin sister Sarah had looked into any possible legends of somebody who looked like that, but we go there on a regular basis, and it always feels creepy. That cemetery is always, it has this oppressive, doomish kind of feeling. Well, we left pretty fast, and we drove down Drainer as fast as is safe because there's nothing but potholes. And we got down to where Drainer Road hits Rochester Road and got out just to check and make sure everything was okay and let everybody have a breather because we were pretty freaked out. And walking around the car and noticed there were handprints, small handprints like little kids, on the back of the truck in the dust.
Well, my brother-in-law and I were responsible for scaring people out there. Our thing was to go out there and hide in the weeds, hide down in the ditch across the road. We'd go out there fortified with straws and maybe a flashlight and a sheet. And when kids from the suburbs would come out there, we'd make noises and put gravel in an empty beer can and shake it, and it scared a lot of kids off. Also, I had a couple try to whip our asses, but we would hide in the woods.
Everyone that I knew in Pontiac knew about Dunn's Tomb, and we used to make regular trips out here. I'm not sure who first found out about it, but you know, kids, they'll do that. They'll go look for stuff to scare them and bring their girlfriends on a trip, and Dunn's Tomb was one of the most popular places that all the kids would go. I've got friends that live up north in Traverse City that asked me about Dunn's Tomb because they'd heard about it. I don't know how everybody knows about Dunn's Tomb. It just got a reputation.
We hung out on Woodward Avenue and just found that a lot of kids from the suburbs just out of Detroit, that was a real trek for them to go out there and see the ghosts or whatever the mythology of the place was. And living in Rochester, it was real close for us, and just became kind of a fun thing to go out to Dunn's Tomb.
Well, first of all, it's a place of respect, and it would be common knowledge that you wouldn't want to come and vandalize. But I think it's fine to come and visit the cemetery and see where Dunn's Tomb is, just so you can say that you were there, because you're going to run across somebody somewhere that's heard of Dunn's Tomb, and you can say, I was there. It's really cool. It's stone. It's really built really, really nice. And I love the fact that it does face the east, because you can actually go over there early in the morning and sit down and watch the sun come up and think about these two people and respect where they are and respect the other gravestones and the other spirits that are in the cemetery, because that's their home, and just be respectful of it when you do come to visit.
Literally hundreds of small, medium, and large cemeteries dot Oakland County. A few have legends associated with them. None in the county, perhaps even the state, have spawned the sheer quantity of legends and unique experiences that this small rural cemetery has. Lakeville Cemetery continues to create and sustain a substantial amount of activity to this day. Just to the north of Lakeville Cemetery and just south of Lakeville Lake is the Lakeville Inn. It is rumored around town that James and Elizabeth Dunn's son built the Lakeville Inn, and due to a few suicides there, it has become the resting place of a couple of restless souls.
Nancy is, what I've heard, is a woman that had overdose upstairs here when it was I guess they used to have rooms up here, and she overdosed on sedatives, and this was told to me by a local resident. A local told me about a gentleman named Skip, who was one of the original, the father owned the place at the time. I believe it was Skip Dunn. I'm not quite sure on the last name, but committed suicide down in the basement that was part of the original building in his Corvette. And he told me that he was very despondent and that he had committed suicide.
Employees have reported hearing singing in the basement, growling in the attic, footsteps stomping up and down the stairs.
Probably a couple years ago was when I first noticed, like a couple times when I was up in the office doing paperwork, I would hear footsteps going up the stairs when I was here by myself. And they were loud enough where I thought someone was actually here, you know, and I would call down for somebody, and of course no one was here, the doors were locked, you know. And I think that was the first time I really kind of experienced something, you know, that I thought might be out of the ordinary.
We had a employee there was pushed from behind, and apparently there's still a mark on her back of where something had pushed her.
The night that the investigators were here, at one point a group of the employees and some of the investigators went downstairs in the basement, which is where most people are afraid to go when they're working because it's dark, lights turn off, they hear noises. So most of us won't go down there by ourselves. So that night, a group of us went down there, we turned off the lights, and a few of the investigators had some electronics, and they would beep at activities. And a lady was waving it around. She pointed it, she had it up to my back, and it started beeping very quickly and loudly. And so we were a little nervous. I was quite scared. So that night, after the investigation, I went home. It was probably 1 o'clock in the morning. I went to bed. I woke up the next day and I felt something on my back. I thought it had been a bug bite. I didn't know what it was. So I had my parents look at it, and it actually was a burn, or it looked like a fingerprint directly in the middle of my back on my spine. And I still don't know what it was, and I still have a scar from it today.
Another time I was downstairs putting stock away in the basement, and all of a sudden I heard a humming, and it was a female hum. And then she started going, oh, la, 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 and I just turned around and I went, knock it off. I thought it was somebody playing a joke. And as soon as I said, knock it off, she started giggling. And I turned around and I looked, and I went through the back room and down, and it just faded away. There was nobody down in the basement with me.
We were downstairs and we were just taking a break. People smoking cigarettes, we were talking amongst ourselves, and Andy and I were standing at a corner bar, and between him and I there was a stand-up menu, and out of nowhere this menu flew off of the bar right between us
and hit the ground. Chris and I both saw it happen, and we couldn't explain it. We tried to recreate it. No one was around it. No one was touching the surface of the bar. We don't know what happened.
One time we were sitting at the bar, and the whole top of the bar slammed down, and I'm talking about overhead, and everything shook, and I just looked up like, what was that? We went upstairs, nothing fell, and it was like, okay.
There are several stories from the wait staff here at the building, as well as the manager, where they've all heard the growl upstairs.
We had heard like this groaning noise almost. It was like a growl in our ears. So It kind of freaked us out.
Most of the investigators witnessed an angry growl coming out of the upstairs attic, and were also able to capture a number of EVPs.
I had a very exciting experience at the Lakeville Inn. I got growled at. I've never been growled at before. It kind of was a bit unnerving. There is an attic entry in the upstairs bathroom, and there had been an experience by the wife of one of the other investigators when she used to work here that had been locked in the bathroom. So we were checking out that bathroom and took off the attic door and crawled up into the attic, and were looking around and heard this growling to the point where I kind of made a little squeal and came down because it was very in your face. One of the other investigators then went back up to check it out to see if he would also have the same experience.
I decided I was going to crawl up in the attic. It was kind of hard to get to, so I had to have some people boost me up there. When I got up in there, I was looking around. It's, just your standard small little attic. They were hearing growls in there and some weird noises. So I kind of wanted to go up there and see if I can see an animal or if something was left up there, try to debunk the growling. And I was sitting up there, and I had my flashlight turned, aiming straight down the attic the long way. And something caught the corner of my eye, and I looked. And when I looked, I saw what appeared to be a face. And it was just a light, but it looked like a face. And then when I looked at it, it shot right at me and stopped maybe a millimeter from my face and disappeared. I can't explain what it was. I couldn't make it happen again. No one else had a similar experience, but to me that was very cool. I've never experienced it before.
The Lakeville Inn restaurant was definitely up there on the list for places that I want to investigate. There's such a great history about that place. Some people talk about Dunn's tomb being associated with the Lakeville Inn restaurant, so very eager to get in there. We had some experience happen to myself and a family member once back in the day while we were eating dinner there, that a person I was with actually got locked in the upstairs bathroom. So that really got me going to get inside this place to find out if there's something else that's going on inside the Lakeville Inn. While we were investigating there, the coincidence of the person being locked in the bathroom and the attic are in the same room. Before we started to investigate, my team member Andy went up into the attic and experienced a face coming right at him. Right then we knew that there was something really hot going on at this place. After that happened, I stuck a voice recorder, a digital voice recorder, up in the attic, and we left it up there for the entire investigation. After we were all done, and when I got home and started to review what was on that digital voice recorder, it just blew my mind. There were voices and sounds and things I've never heard before, and this was, I can totally understand the paranormal activity now that was going on up in that attic, because I cannot explain the things that happened on this recorder. There was nobody around. We were 2 stories below at one point in the basement, and the voices we picked up, all kinds of crazy things. It blew my mind.
Two of the investigators were able to communicate with the spirit by asking questions and having their flashlights turning on and off.
Are you turning on my flashlight? Can you make it a little bit brighter for us? Can you come back in here? You almost got it. Thank you. Do you feel comfortable with us in here? Communicate with Andy's flashlight. We can do that again. We'd appreciate it. Or the one above the bar.
Not touching it. Yep.
Yep.
Something that they say that happens is quite frequent is in the men's bathroom downstairs. There, all the sinks, toilets, urinals, toilet or paper towel dispensers, all that's automatic. And what happens is they do have a hand dryer in there, and every couple weeks at night, 10 o'clock at night, the dryer goes off by itself. Well, we went in there when we were there, and we actually experienced firsthand, there were about 4 of us in the bathroom, and we actually had the urinal flush by itself with nobody in there. And I know it sounds, yeah, sure, they're automatic, but we tried to recreate where everybody was standing, could not get it to go off. So then we started asking questions and asked if the spirit would do it again. Well, then the sink went off by itself, and none of us had moved at all. We were all standing stationary. So we were all kind of, ooh, this is exciting. And the manager was standing about 2 feet away from me on my left-hand side, and it was pitch dark in there, and all of a sudden you heard this sigh. It was just like a... And I looked over at the manager and I said, "What?" And she looked at me and she said, "That wasn't you?" And I said, "No, that wasn't you." And she said, "No." And it was right next to us. It was between the both of us. And the manager went running out of the bathroom screaming. It was definitely an experience.
Hand dryer going off, no lights on in the bathroom. We'd be sitting there at the end of the shift, and all of a sudden you'd hear the hand dryer going off with no lights on. It's a sensor, sensitive. Nobody in there.
And we went into the men's restroom, which used to be the women's restroom. And we were in there, we had the lights off, and some of the investigators were egging on spirits, talking to them, and they said, if you're here, make a noise, make the faucet turn on, make the toilet flush. So Doris and I happened to be clinging on to each other, and one of the urinals went off. So naturally we ran out screaming, and then we came back in again, and this time, before I had been standing close to a urinal, but not in front of a sensor. So at this time, I actually stepped further away just to make sure. And they said, if you're here, do it again. And we waited a few minutes, and once again, the urinal flushed, and we didn't go back in.
One of our customers, who's been coming here for years, says that the first time he was ever here, he walked in, and he said it was a real sunny day. He remembers that the bar, it was, real sunny and shiny, and he sat down at a chair where he would come in and sit occasionally, and it was his very first time. And he said a gentleman asked him what he wanted to drink, and he ordered a rum and coke, and the gentleman brought him the rum and coke, and then he walked away toward the door, and toward the front door. And then the girl came out from behind the server area and came up to him and, was kind of angry with him because she thought he had made his own drink. And, well, he didn't. He says to this day, he swears it was a ghost, because he said this gentleman served me a drink, and spoke to him, and then just was gone. And you can't, where our bar is, you can't get out, to go to the front door.
If you're looking for a place to get a good burger and some spirits, look no further than Lakeville's own Lakeville Inn.
We bought this property, the land and the house, in August of 1998. We just celebrated 10 years here. The original part of this house, which is about a 24-foot square section, like a garage size, that it was originally an Army barracks headquarters in Madison Heights in Michigan. We encountered a few different circumstances where there were it seemed like ghosts or people visiting us, but Some of them we didn't see, and in particular, that happened quite often. We'd be sleeping in one room, and I would hear what I thought was the radio playing, like a talk show, men's voices, but very low. And so I would say, you know, I left the radio on. I got up, I walked in the other room to turn the radio off, and it wasn't on. And I just kind of blew it off and didn't think much of it. And it continued to happen probably 2 or 3 times a week, and my husband started hearing it. I kind of started thinking that maybe it had something to do with the soldiers and the original part. And the voices came from the original part, not the additions that were put there. So it just seemed like the soldiers were still talking and carrying on, and we just kind of let them do that. I had gotten up in the middle of the night to let the cat out, and I went back to go lay down, and I started falling asleep, and I heard a whooshing noise. My dog was growling at the end of the bed, and when I went to move the blanket, I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. And then there was a pressure on my body, on my right side, like my torso, from my shoulder down to my hip. Went about 4 times back and forth, really, really heavy, like a massage. And then it just stopped suddenly, instantly, just like that, it was gone. Went to stand up to put my slippers on, I looked around, and I couldn't stand up. My legs were really weak, so I think the fright just made me so tense. Somebody was there to visit me, and for as scared as I was while it was happening, afterwards it seemed to me, a really good friend of mine told me a long time ago that when these things happen, because they happen to me a lot, that sometimes they're coming to warn you or protect you, they're not going to hurt you. And her voice and that information is what kept me from being as scared as I should have been. First summer that we moved in after it was all done and built, so this would be in summer of '99, I was standing in my kitchen doing dishes, and it was nighttime, and I saw a reflection in the window. It was kind of a white cloth, and I thought somebody ran by with a flag. So I turned around and there was nothing there, and I thought, well, that's weird. I just figured the light must have flickered, and I turned around to finish doing dishes, and I saw it again. I turned around and there was nothing there. It happened twice. I let it go, and then it continued to happen probably 3 or 4 times that week, and it was always at night, and it was always when I was standing by the kitchen window. So I felt like this couldn't be a coincidence. Somebody was trying to present themselves to me, and I called my friend again and said, there's somebody here. I'm not too scared of them, but I believe there's somebody here. And that's when she told me they might be there to warn you or protect you. And she asked me in more detail what it looked like. It felt like a very feminine force, not really overpowering, very feathery, and you could see white, like somebody was invisible wearing long white silk. And they were going right behind me, and then they would disappear down the hall, and then they would do it again. And they did it 3 or 4 times. And later that week, I just became more aware that there's more around us than what we see every day. I think people should be open to experience things like this, only because if they're not, it could be a warning, and it could be someone trying to help them, or it could be somebody trying to talk to them, or it could be somebody that needs your help. When you close it off, you close off everything, and being more open to having entities or ghosts or whatever even sometimes it's just a really strong feeling. Some people call them premonitions or your gut feeling or intuition. Those are all very likely a small way of someone or somebody that's out there that's on the other side that really wants to come and visit you.
Why has one house experienced this amount of activity? Is it the fact that Mary visits Lakeville Cemetery regularly? Or that her house was once an army barracks? She may never know. From ancient lore around the world, trails and roads were often said to be visited by demons, fairies, goblins, and the like. Often the unsuspecting traveler was lured to their death, or perhaps an even worse fate. More recently, America's highways and byways have played a large part in the American dream. And for those born and bred in the automobile capital of the world, the lure of the road has special significance. From cruising the city's main drags to braving the back roads, driving is always ranked as one of Michigan's favorite pastimes. Is there something about the aimlessness, being so in the present that allows the eye to play tricks on the mind? Was that apparition that appeared on the side of the road really there at all? Back up. Let's check it out. Or do we dare? Which brings us to Blood Road in Metamora. The name itself speaks volumes. The road literally hemorrhages rumors. Blood Road itself has seen many incarnations over time. And over the cyclical nature of Michigan seasons, it can be a claustrophobic dense tunnel of trees, a muddy mess, or a dry, grassy two-lane stretch. In fact, one legend has it that the rutted road actually seeps a crimson liquid behind the tracks of vehicles. The stories about the road also have many variations. Many claim that in the 1600s, witches from the eastern seaboard, fleeing persecution, sought a safe haven in the swamps surrounding Blood Road. From the 1950s on, the area has drawn many teens, looking to scare themselves as well as their female companions. The isolated woods surrounding Blood Road made it a perfect breeding ground for rumors of evil doing. Visitors have reported trees following you as you walk the road, beast-like sounds of a creature alongside you as you drive, apparitions appearing in front of your car, and chanting coming from the woods.
Again, Blood Road was one of the places where kids from the suburbs would go. Haunted road, whatever. But I never knew any of the history of Blood Road as to why it was a terrible place to be or to go.
A story about Blood Road, in that a farmer lived there and went crazy and killed his family, and so they named Blood Road after him. A whole number of things. Aside from it just being haunted in general, I've heard stories like that various stories about people hanging themselves on the side of the road. One guy hung himself from the top of his van, I've heard. Some of the creepy things that you're supposed to see or happen is, I heard a man was killed. He was hit by a car, I think, down by that road, or committed suicide. And if you're driving down Blood Road and you hit a particularly sharp curve, an apparition is supposed to jump out in front of you, and it's supposed to seem pretty eerie, in that you hit it with your car, but you didn't hit anything.
We spent a lot of time on Blood Road in those days. This would have been 73 through 75 when I was in high school. The original story we heard of Blood Road involved a couple that drove down there to go parking or something, and the car ran out of gas or died. And it involved the guy leaving the girl in the car to go get help, a tow truck or something for the car. The girl waited and waited, and eventually it was a rather windy night, and eventually she heard something banging against the car, or rear window behind her or something. But she was frightened and she didn't bother to turn around and look. After a period of time, a policeman showed up, tapped on the window and said, we're gonna help you out. And he helped her out of the car, and as they were walking away from the car, he mentioned to her not to look back, and naturally she did. And the way we heard the story is the guy's body was hanging from a tree limb over the car. It was skinned, and his hand was banging against the car, and that was the banging she heard.
Oh, when I was in college, the urban legend at the time was that there had been a farmer on Blood Road who had axe murdered his family. And as a consequence of that, we had a lot of interest in going to Blood Road. We went to Blood Road, and the end of the road was flooded. And I had an old 1956 Plymouth. And as we were going along, the muffler started to submerge. And eventually it was actually submerged, and it sounded like a motorboat. We were afraid to turn around. We were afraid to stop, and we were afraid to turn around, because had the water sucked into the muffler, it could have stopped the engine, and we'd have been stranded on Blood Road.
I heard a story that a guy and a girl was driving in a truck, and they ran out of gas. The guy left her to go for help, and he was gone for hours, and apparently there was like a scratching at the top of the roof. And that when someone actually finally came to her to see, they said, "Don't look up." And she looked up, and I was told that it was like his thumbnail scratching the top of the roof, like hanging from a tree.
Well, if you think about this story at all, it doesn't make a lot of sense. In that area, in those days, there was nothing. There was no houses, there was nothing. There was a farmhouse at the Brocker End Road of Blood Road. It looked like a derelict house. There may have been an old woman or old couple that lived in it. But other than that, I don't remember any houses around that area. That area is pretty desolate. It's a giant swamp. And now it's a subdivision. I don't know how those people live in that subdivision. Mosquitoes must be terrible.
Blood Road is so infamous, the Road Commission orders extra copies of the sign every year. Many people risk persecution by stealing the sign on a regular basis.
My uncle worked for the Road Commission out of Metamora, and I remember as a kid he complaining about the kids stealing road signs. They couldn't keep Blood Road signs up on the highway. Really, still. Amazing how these things go on and on and on and on.
Blood Road is also so notorious that it has spawned its own spinoff, Rock Valley. Rock Valley Road is a barely visible narrow dirt lane running at a twisted angle off Blood Road. Although the small valley town has long since reverted to nature, beneath the overgrowth of watery bog, witnesses say the original stone foundations of the asylum are still there.
Well, my dad would take us there when we were kids and try to drive through Rock Valley Road from Blood Road to Gardner Road. And it was a real challenge because the Flint River down there would continually flood the road. And later on, I worked with my brother-in-law timbering in there and had pretty much trekked all over, and then also four-wheeled a lot in there. And again, this would be when we were timbering, was the early 80s.
The story goes that Rock Valley actually goes between Blood Road and Hosner Road east of Oxer. But it dead ends in Blood Road Swamp. The story went that there was a town called Rock Valley. It was a sleepy little hamlet. It was just like a leftover from the logging days. Had a saloon, hotel, a blacksmith shop, a couple houses. But it did have one claim to fame. It had a small insane asylum. The story went that in the late 1800s, the water table, there is a couple rivers that run through there. I think that's why it's swampy. The water table rose, flooding the town of Rock Valley. It's waist deep, so the people had to abandon the town. Well, the insane asylum, the story goes, the insane asylum was on higher ground and remained open until 1903. At which time, the owners locked the door and walked away, leaving the inmates in their cells. And the story is they eventually got out of their cells and that they've been interbreeding in that huge swamp ever since. And that's where the legend of Blood Road actually originates in 1903 or the early 1900s, of the inmates that were still surviving in that swamp.
Cranberry Cafe sits in downtown Goodrich and has been recently restored by Mitch and Patty Plant, who, on more than one occasion, has felt the presence of an approving spirit.
We've been here about 15 years. A couple changes over the way, and the storefront expanded during that time.
We were renovating the building after a fire in the building next door. And we have tin ceilings here that we decided to use instead of drop ceilings, which we took out. And I was here one night, I was scrubbing the ceilings, the smoke off it, and I was up on a 10-foot ladder, and all of a sudden I felt a kind of a funny urge next to me to turn around. And when I did, there was a man standing there. He was wearing, in detail, he was wearing khaki pants, black shoes. He had a blue jacket on and a blue and white plaid shirt. And he looked up at me and smiled and shook his head yes. And then when I tried to retake it, he was gone. It was like a approving smile is how I took it, that he enjoyed the fact that we were renovating the place back to what it used to be many years ago.
I had experienced several years later, we had taken over the second storefront, and it was after hours. We were sitting, myself and some of my workers, and we were sitting in a new room, and as I caught out of the corner of my eye movement, and then I looked again and I saw a figure move across the hallway. And then it just really spooked me out, and I gathered the coworkers and we went to investigate. Didn't know where, and it was just a real kind of an odd feeling we got. Doors were locked. Because that was the first thing we did. We went and checked the doors to make sure someone wasn't inside with us, because when we were closed down and it was after hours, all the doors were locked. Most of the lights were off. There were just a few lights on. They got the same feeling that I did, that there was something going on. There was something there. Or many times we talked about it and just what an eerie feeling it was, and how we got the goose pimples, and it was just, we knew something was there, but we never could track down what.
Working down in the basement, a lot of times when I'm working down there alone, and I know there's nobody upstairs here, it sounds like there's footsteps coming from above. I'm not sure, if the building next door is vacant at the time, if there's anybody in there, or what could be making the noise, but it sounds like there's some people walking up above.
The Cranberry Cafe was another interesting place that we went to. There was some talk about when they were remodeling it, there was an apparition seen, I believe, twice by the owners. So that got us pretty excited to get in there. Unfortunately, while we were there, we did not experience that, but while Andy and I were in the basement, we did come across, I believe Andy did hear a voice, and I was able to communicate with a spirit amongst a bunch of books for some reason that were in the basement. Could you make it move higher for us? Could you go to a 2, please? Can you try that one more time? The meter was at a 0.4, now we're communicating, it's up to 2.2. We're just asking for some type of sign that you're down here, and I really appreciate what you're trying to do right now. I'm going to turn on my voice recorder. You talking to that little red light for me? Thank you. 2.7. Do you feel comfortable down in the basement? Holy smokes. Did you see that?
Yeah.
4.1. It lasted for a few minutes, and then all of a sudden it just went away. And possibly at that time when it did go away, I believe my partner Andy did experience some type of voice or a whisper at the other end of the basement.
I was in this small little storage room by myself, and I had just a flashlight. I heard a whispering noise. I was standing in this corner, and I heard some loud rustling. That's why I came over here to check out what it was. And I'm standing right about where you are, and I heard a whisper noise, like a male voice whisper, coming from your left, my right, over in this area, and it was drawn out and it was long. So I'm actually running around, I'm searching for it, trying to pinpoint exactly what it is, and then it just stopped. And I mean, yeah, that normal furnace and all that was running out there, but when that stopped, nothing else stopped working. Everything kept running how it was. I have no idea. And at that point, my flashlight completely malfunctioned, shut itself off, and then started flickering, came back on, shut itself off again, and it was a brand new flashlight. I had used it on one other investigation. I haven't changed the battery since, and it's worked fine. And haven't had any other problems with it since then.
Holy smokes, 5.5. Good job.
Is it the past owner that Mitch saw giving his approval of the renovations and upkeep of the cafe? Or is it something more sinister? Only time will tell. Erebus is something of a local legend. The haunted house, located in Pontiac, holds the title of the world's largest indoor haunted house by Guinness World Records. But could this scariest of haunted houses actually be haunted by real ghosts?
I mean, I've been living off and on in this building for 10 years, and whatever's here, I get along with it, and it gets along with me, and I ain't gonna mess that up, and just keep smiling and keep walking, I mean, it's nothing's gotten me. I mean, like I said, I got people that refuse to go any further. I got people that, freak out. We had actors acting here for a night and then refused to act any further. I called the police before, and we had the police dogs come through here. We were 100% sure somebody was in the building, 100%. And even with the dogs, couldn't find nothing. And then you just kind of...
Because the door slamming. Things moved
Just,
at all,
like even,
touch.
hasn't happened in a while, but the alarm used to go off. It was motion sensors. But if the alarm went off, and you exited, I would know if you exited. I mean, just, I'm a locksmith by trade. I know the doors work. I installed them all. And if you got out, unless when you leave, pull the doorknob, it pulls back the deadbolt. The door slams, the deadbolt's not locked. So if that deadbolt's thrown, there's no way you went through that door. Every door was secured. No windows were broken out. And it was just too weird. Yeah, claims of people seeing things, but I personally haven't seen anything. But a lot of weird feelings, shadows. It seems a lot of shadows. Like I was talking to Lee, you guys were pulling up. His thing is, it's always at the end of the hallway. And especially like upstairs, they're always walking left to right.
I used to run a fossil reproduction company out of here, and my wife and I, a lot of times we were working late at night, and we would hear, it was clearly inside the building, we would hear the sound of like metal doors slamming. I don't get spooked that much, and I was bringing a baseball bat out here with me at night, going to look for the sound, couldn't find out where any doors were slamming. Pretty much that's it. Every time I heard it, I would go through here, get to the point I got far enough where I'd get creeped out to not go any farther, but I did hear doors slamming. There's a room around the corner, I heard rustling inside of it, went in there, didn't see anything, and that was the only strange things that would happen. But it would happen reoccurringly, where we would hear it, we'd be here 9, 10 o'clock at night, that kind of thing. Everyone's gone, there was no one in the building, and there was no explanation for it. So,
Erebus investigation was probably one of the most exciting things that I ever thought could happen. It is, the most known haunted house in the state of Michigan. It's known throughout the United States, and I've been there once as a patron, and I thought this is the most awesome experience that we're gonna get to actually get in there and investigate. We got in, the owner gave us the tour of the place, and first response was I could not believe how massive it really was. 4 stories, including a basement, and actually you could drive a vehicle in there. They had a spiral driveway inside the building. That was really cool. The stories from all the employees that only worked for a couple days and then wouldn't come back, you just think there has to be something cool going on. So we started our investigation in the basement. There was a large boiler room with 2 massive boilers in it, probably the largest I've ever seen in my life. And had 2 coal rooms on the opposite side of the basement, and there was no electricity in that room. There were no lights. We could not see a thing, and I was in the coal room with Chris, and it was literally the darkest room I have ever been in my life. I could not see a thing.
There was some talk of a possible homeless person that might have passed in the basement. So again, we were thinking if we could communicate with the spirit of somebody that had already passed in the basement, that would be great. While we were down there investigating, we decided to go into the actual room where the coal was brought through the outside wall. When we shut all the lights off, all the flashlights and all the equipment that we had, it was so pitch black you could not see your hand in front of your face. You know, you've heard that story before. You can't. It was absolutely pitch black. While standing there with Andy, myself, and Jeff, we started to experience little green lights that were appearing out of nowhere. We couldn't explain what it was. We didn't have any meters on, so we couldn't take a reading, but this was a personal experience that I've never seen before, and I believe Andy and Jeff, it was the first time they might have seen something like this, but it was very interesting, and I don't have an answer what it was.
That there was some spirit activity there. It's questionable still, but there was an area where we could measure an EMF field, and when you could put your hand into it and feel the static electricity. And myself and Holly and Jeff, we all 3 felt it. You could put your hand right in it and you could feel the edge of it. It was a very cool kind of tactile experience. And the EMF, the MEL 8704, did register at that location, and it did move. So it didn't appear to be associated with anything in the floor. There were just a bunch of pipes laying around, so there wasn't really anything that it could have been coming from.
I only had one unexplainable experience there where there was an EMF field that was down by the floor, and it would move, but it would only get up to maybe 4 feet, 5 feet tall. So to me, that made me wonder whether it was something paranormal or something that was in the ground itself, but it would seem to move. So I think there is activity there, but I just don't think that I caught any of it.
Erebus is housed in a huge warehouse built in 1928. Previously vacant for 40 years, accumulated residual energies are very apparent in this maze-like 9,800 square foot building.
So here we are standing in the lobby of the Eagle Theater in downtown Pontiac. In 2006, probably January or February, we were busy restoring the Crowfoot Ballroom next door, and I came in the early morning, and on the stairs behind me, I walked into the lobby, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a silhouette that looked just like a person. And I turned suddenly and looked at it, and I actually raised up my arms because I thought it was somebody charging towards me, and it wasn't. It was dark in this room, and there's lots of different shapes, and light moves in some strange ways, and I don't know what it was. You know, my heart was pounding. To this day, I have no idea what I saw.
The distinct sense of an imminent onslaught that Dan felt while standing in the inner lobby of the theater was later experienced by another of the theater's employees.
Later on in the day, I was in the office, and I heard a yell, and I walked out into this very same spot, and one of our other employees who had come into the building was standing with his arms up, facing the same stairs, and he had thought that someone was rushing down the stairs at him, and he was terrified, and you know, obviously it rattled me a little bit because it was exactly what had happened to me earlier that day.
Eagle Theater was built in 1927 on the site of Pontiac's oldest movie house and is situated in one of the oldest preserved blocks of commercial buildings in Michigan. The Eagle was one of many vaudeville theaters and opera houses which played to packed houses and graced Pontiac, a formerly prosperous hub of commercial activity. Since the demise of the original theater, the Eagle has weathered many incarnations, from cafe to nightclub to boarded up vacant eyesore slated for demolition. The facade of the Eagle Theater features original Moorish deco influences, which are reflected in the interior of the theater as well. Completely windowless, all walls painted black, darkness envelops the visitor immediately upon entering, creating an almost womb-like atmosphere in the theater. Ornate silver crown molding and recessed ceiling domes reflect the theater's only luminance. As the visitor ascends to the second floor mezzanine, a suspended catwalk adds an uneasy and dizzying dimension to the darkness. But it's the maze of passageways and stairwells leading from the second floor to the third that convinces even the most skeptical that something is amiss at the Eagle Theater. The almost tangible level of dread is felt by many who ascend to the third floor, which features original Art Deco tiled bathrooms reminiscent of those in The Shining, as well as the only remaining intact kitchenette efficiency apartments from the Vaudevillian era in existence. It is within these small apartments, originally designed as temporary boarding rooms for traveling performers, that the source of the theater's unexplained disturbances originates. Legend has it that on certain midnights, an overwhelming smell of cooking odor, particularly the distinct smell of frying bacon, can be smelled in the unoccupied rooms on the third floor. Sometime near the turn of the century, a woman was rumored to have met a gruesome and untimely death when she was burnt to death by a grease fire which started in one of the third floor kitchenettes.
There was an accident where a housekeeper or a woman, I don't know if it was a performer, fell asleep while frying bacon, and it set a fire, and she caught on fire and died.
While our paranormal crew investigated the theater, they had a number of unexplained noises and shadows. One investigator even started following an apparition who she thought was another investigator.
The group that I was with were upstairs. We had been in a room where we were getting some interesting EMF readings. There had been some smells. I stayed behind to do some scrying in one of the mirrors, and everyone else left. I kind of was overcome by a creepy feeling and realized everybody else was gone somewhere. Don't leave me alone. And as I turned, I saw somebody.
We had definitely been way over there. When you said
Really?
that, we were definitely over there.
I don't want to be alone. And then I saw somebody walk this way, like
we were down there.
go past the door and down this hallway. And I heard the footsteps. And I swore it was Todd. Todd, I swear it was you. And you walked down the hall, and then I was like, where did you guys go? Because when I looked down the hallway, I didn't see you. I didn't see the light or anything. And I said, where are you guys? And you're like, we're over here. And then you all came out. I thought it was just going to be you and you. Because I thought, I swear to God, you had gone down the hallway there.
No, I was down that way.
So when the three of you came out of there, that was like a woo freak out moment.
A lot of activity has been told of different things going on there. Again, paper flying out of people's hands and footsteps. While we were up there trying to communicate, I was sitting on a stairwell with three steps, and behind me was an open doorway to a room. At one point where we were trying to communicate, I felt something touch me on my back of my shoulder and squeeze hard enough for me to feel it. After the investigation, we all went downstairs and we decided to talk amongst ourselves with the other groups. And I mentioned that I possibly was felt on my shoulder, or felt something on my shoulder during the investigation, and another team member from another group said the exact same thing. Before I could say what shoulder or where it was, she said the exact same thing.
On the second floor of the Eagle Theater, where they have a bar attached to the back of the old lighting booth or the old film booth. And I was standing in that entryway looking out towards the stage, and there's some arches along the side of the wall. And one of the arches, I kept seeing this shadow, and it looked like a head, a silhouette of a head. And I thought that there were stairs there, and I called down to the other investigators, is anyone on the stairs? And they're like, no, why? And I said, because I see a shadow. It looks like somebody's coming up the stairs. Well, come to find out, there are no stairs there. There's no way a person from outside, their shadow could have reflected on that wall. And then also in my still photos, I found an orb in that same location where I had seen those shadows. I was in the basement with Jeff and Brian, and we were down there, and Jeff had heard a noise, but he didn't reveal to us that he had heard anything. And all of a sudden, down this dark, kind of spooky hallway, we both kind of looked, Jeff and I both kind of looked down the hall, and then we both kind of looked at each other. I heard a faint whispering, and it was almost like, to me, I guess you could compare it to like a little kid, two little kids together going pss, 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 pss. And we both heard it with our own ear, and come to find out, Jeff had heard something as well, and earlier, and had not said anything. And then when I heard it, I kind of confirmed what he had heard.
Right away, you could just feel an uneasy feeling in that basement. We started working with our EMF detector and started getting readings right away. We experienced some almost whispers, voices that we all picked up with our ears. Something that we didn't hear that we did pick up was a very clear voice saying, "Do not leave us down here." That one really sent some chills down my back when I picked that one up when I was going through the evidence. What it was, not sure, but it's clear as day.
Immediately, we were getting activity. We were in a kind of like a furnace room or a boiler room, and we kept hearing whispers, and we kept hearing feet shuffling, and we kept seeing shadows move from doorways and move around, and every time we go to investigate further, they would be gone or the noises would stop. One of our other crew members, he was sitting in a chair, and something actually touched his back, and he had never experienced this before, so he freaked out, didn't know what to do, and it stopped, and he still sat there, and then it happened again.
Can you maybe communicate through the smoke?
Oh, there was something on my back.
Can you come back over
Did you
here?
hear that too?
Yeah.
Afterwards? Whoa. The hair's standing up on my
Isn't that awesome?
No.
That is a great feeling.
Holy crap.
Even while our production crew used the Eagle Theater as a backdrop for interviews, they experienced a few unexplainable incidents.
While at the Eagle Theater running the boom for the interviews, I actually encountered or experienced something that was almost like it walked by, and I had a retractable badge holder, and felt like it came by, pulled on it, and I could feel it hitting me in the hip.
He had his boom, the bottom of the boom mic set right up by his hip. He had a zip cord string badge from work that he was wearing, and right there in the middle of the interview, this zip string, I saw it out of the corner of my eye. It was like pulled down and like let go, and it flew back up into its normal place by his belt. And I know it couldn't have been Josh because he had his both hands on his boom mic, and there was nobody to the right of him that I recall. That was a very strange incident and flustered us for a while.
Also during that same interview, almost instantly after the badge had hit me in the hip, the card that was on the clacker, the scene clacker, had come off the board and hit the ground so hard that a piece of paper shouldn't be hitting the ground like that.
It was not a draft. But the story goes that there was a man murdered in the house when it was being built. We were the second owners of the house, so I tried to find that information. We were the second owners of the house, so I tried to find that information.
While everyone was sitting around, I got up because I thought I saw something on the corner of my eye, so I stood up and I started walking down a corridor, and I looked down towards the other end of the building, and I saw a full figure of a shadow, just a full shadow figure, walk from one side of the doorway to the other. And immediately I gave chase because I wanted to see if something else was down there.
I don't even know where he went. Can't see him anymore. He went and turned left.
What do you got?
I just saw a whole body.
No way.
A whole what?
Full body apparition?
Nice. Over there, I'm shining right down here. And I saw it just right past. I don't know if it went in that room or this room.
This is where we heard the noise and got the
This is where we saw the
pulse, too.
shadow.
Oh my god. It was so fast.
You saw it
so
over
were you.
here?
I was way up by the doorway. And I'm just standing here and I'm shining my light right there and I'm looking. And I saw something. Because I could see the black switcher boxes. I could see that doorway. It had to have went in that little room because I saw it in front of that doorway.
Let's go back to
full figure.
Let's go back down there.
Although the owners and staff are all proud to work in such a distinct and finely renovated historic theater, few will enter the third floor alone. And despite the 9 vacant apartments on the third floor, none have yet dared to spend the night at the Eagle Theater.
Some of our findings do indeed reinforce the truth behind the legend. Other times the story is just that, a good story, to be enjoyed and retold. And that completes our goal for this documentary. By using today's research tools, we're able to save these stories from oblivion.